let's take a moment to talk about something or have a discussion. So, that's the best part on retreats, I feel anyway, that it's lovely to practice together, but to me the best part is having meals and chats over meals on retreats.
May I ask something about the mudras? I'm not used to it, and I don't know which finger position you are taking, because I think I have had to watch videos before. I didn't have had watched enough. But what is the purpose of those finger positions? Will the concentration get deeper then, or?
No, it is not a concentration matter of concentration. There is empowerment, and in empowerment there are deity or deities. In Rainbow Body Yoga there's a dozen of them in the first one. So deities can be practiced through mantra and mudra. Just like Ugi and Tina were saying in their guidances, that when you do the mudra, this is the same like saying the mantra, but it's just a physical action. But this mudra does the same, has the same effect.
Can I ask something about your practice when you are in the part of perfecting 11, 12, and 13? It relates to the physical body.
Sure. I can answer if I can.
Yeah, it's like, do you feel it? Like, do you feel, because in my mind it sounds like you have bones and tissues and so forth, and then you see Sambhogakaya, or realize more and more Sambhogakaya, so that changes. That's how, and that's kind of how I've been thinking about it. And then I wonder if you can like feel it, like if or is this like a complete weird question?
What do you mean feel it? Feel what?
In my mind, it sounds like when you go through the process of rainbow body, then you go from physical tissues till non-physical tissues, or non-physical Sambhogakaya. And do you can you kind of feel the bones, the stuff in the body change that way, or is that just something I've been pondering?
I'm not going to answer it, Oscar. If it was anybody else asking that question, I would answer, but because it's you, and you have the tendency to just completely over-analyze and over-intellectualize everything, I'm not gonna answer. Sorry, mate. We've talked about this, and I've told you this several times. You try to figure out everything. It's a lovely question, but sorry. You just go way ahead of yourself.
Could I ask like a question which sort of in my mind takes it back quite a few steps, and I think probably Oscar's probably asked it, but it's more to do with, we were discussing physical practice and internal martial arts, and I said, well, it's not necessary to do physical practice in order for full liberation.
Right, yeah.
or that's true. So how is it helpful? In what way is it helpful to do the physical practice in terms of helping the process along?
You can do without entirely without physical practices. But then, of course, well, this is kind of historically interesting that, according to the legend, there was this southern Indian monk named Bodhidharma, who in the, in the 5th century, he traveled from southern India to China. I don't remember where Shaolin Monastery is located, but anyway, to the place where Shaolin Monastery is now and has been for a long time. So the legend is that he started teaching students, and they would just sit and perhaps do a little bit work, but physically very passive. So then few years went by, I guess, and then, Bodhidharma, or I don't know if it was exactly Bodhidharma or was it a couple of generations after him, but anyway, early on, whoever was head of training started looking that, oh, these fellows, they look pale and weak, and they have aches and pains, so we gotta do something about that. And they started doing yoga, they started, I think you could say that they, with that discovery of having the monks and practitioners get weak, that set the feet of the Shaolin tradition towards dynamic activity. How do you express dynamic activity with human body? Well, you can dance very vigorously, but like I was saying, that internal martial arts, it doesn't have to do with punching and kicking people. It's not about fighting or combat, though historically it has also been part of monastic living, both in East and West. But the point is that, punching, kicking, jumping, push-ups, sit-ups, it's an very useful, very beneficial, and also very beneficial for practice. But if we think of, maybe we all have had periods in our life when we didn't exercise. So your body starts to deteriorate, your muscles get weak. When they get weak, your posture gets bent, and when that happens, you start having aches and pains, and it just doesn't feel good, and you feel kind of, tired. You don't have energy to walk the stairs, or you might be exhausted in the evening when you've done day's work. So I think it's just commonsensical based on this fact that we do need exercise, no matter who you are. And I don't mean disrespect at all, but when I see these all kinds of saints and sages, I mentioned a couple of names last session, but who have this really lousy posture, and kind of the body is just seems like a necessary evil for them. To me, it's completely off. I don't understand it. I really don't understand that kind of decision. I respect people's individual views and their decisions to, for example, to not take care of the body. But if you understand that it's only beneficial to do that, it's beneficial in life, it's beneficial for practice because it allows you to practice better, have energy, have energy for it. If you do mindfulness practice, you'll have more energy from exercising. So I don't get it why somebody wouldn't exercise. If it's not possible to due to illnesses of some kind, then of course, then you can't. Or you can do very limited type of exercising, but I just don't get it. But emptiness realization is completely about the mind and phenomena in the mind. So that is also a fact. So these are two different, physical exercising and emptiness meditation, they are two different categories. But because they happened in the same body mind is what the deal is. That's the deal, James. Ben, please.
Yeah, so I've been wondering, and thinking a lot about how you mentioned this something a lot, which is, have you during the practice recognizing the basic state. And so I have just a couple experiences with what to me I think was Rigpa, and it's so different, so radically different than anything I reach normally. So like we do a meditate, so I'll be doing my day and I'll contract it, and then I sit down and meditate and we do the exercises and I feel much clearer, but it's still like so far away from the
Right.
actual. And so my question is that like what I would call like a shadow of Rigpa that's still more clear than normal day to day? Is that still useful to marinate in? Like, does that actually help, or is that something where you just want to, for like me in my practice, do I just want to keep cutting until I get to the real thing? Because I can see that there's like little aspects of it, but it's just not, it's so obvious to me, it's like that's definitely not it yet.
Right. Oh, that's a very good question. Well, something, a little example helps you to understand about the mechanics of that. So earlier I was discussing about these different bhumi layers in the aura and of course in the body. So it's like being covered by these thick blankets. So if you get some clarification, you do whatever practices you do, and there is some clarification, but not the full clarity, the full Rigpa, like you were saying. There is some clarity, but not the full. It means that when you have done your practices, you have removed momentarily some of those blankets, but not all of them, not all 10 layers. So that is that. And what I always say is that especially in the beginning stages of the practice, meaning until the 11th opens, and then Rigpa basic states become stable. Then you don't have to search for it anymore. It's just there. So up until that, in beginning stages, keep punching. Doing too much is better than doing too little in that point. Yeah, definitely. And also, like a necessary requirement for getting to the 11th is that, like I was talking about, what difference bodhicitta makes in comparison to not practicing bodhicitta. So dynamic practices, however you do them, whatever is your favorite recipe with bodhicitta. That's the key to get to the 11th, to get through the 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And when I sit in I can tell there's some clearing in the lower boomies, but I'm like, I don't want to just sit here. I want to keep drilling.
Yeah. Good. That's good. Yeah, definitely.
Oscar reminded me of a question which were lingering in the back of my head for a few times. I don't know how to resolve this contradiction. May I ask it?
You can ask.
It's a bit of theoretical question also. You mentioned a few times that to the karma which is stored in the area of the body, physical body, not aura, but physical body, corresponding bhumis are first to sixth, right? But you also, so the first to sixth is for karma which stored in the body. And but you also mentioned about a knot in a tailbone, which was popped relatively rather recently, maybe a year ago or 2 years ago. I remember this moment you talked about this knot. And
Yeah.
as far as I understand, you already had bhumis from first to sixth perfected
Right.
to this point. So I don't understand how this point, this knot could exist if in the tailbone, which is part of the physical body. You understood the question, okay?
Yes. I don't think that's a very theoretical question, but a very practical one. So the deal is that that's a very good question. But in a similar way, if we think of gut, heart, and head, those doorways that we have used, they are also in the body space. How possible? Because these are Mahasiddha Bhumi doorways. The answer is that what is that word? Different things exist in the same space. What is that? Like a it's like different frequencies in the same space. So it's sort of like different kinds of music. There is one kind of music, second kind of music, third kind of music, and they are all playing in the same space without bumping to each other. Maybe that's a bit weak example, but you understand what I mean. But when it comes to like I haven't given a thought about it several times, but if we think of the 18 centers around the body that we practice, because the 6 here we connect with the 6 bhumis in the limbs, in all 4. But I have never discussed about the whether the 18 centers are within the 6 bhumis or whether they are 7, 8, 9 bhumis. right? So I can only really maybe give an example that, when I had that trauma knot in my tailbone, it was much more in earlier years when I was still perfecting 1 through 6. But it didn't disappear when I finished perfection of 6th. So it only finished, was completely removed actually just before the perfection of 10th. So this tells that, just like I have sometimes said that in some methods they say that when you attain the first stage, the first path of meditation or the second path, you get rid of this and that emotional reaction. Like you attain the second stage, you get rid of anger. You attain third one, you get rid of jealousy. So it's very black and white. I can't testify to that model at all, because I think that the whole self-delusion, it's a continuum through bhumis 1 through 10. So, if I was to think that, did I get rid of anger or jealousy when perfecting the first 6 bhumis? No, they were reduced, but there was still left anger and jealousy, anxiety in the rest of the bhumis. So it's like a continuum. So this is an answer to your question, that it's a good observation that how does it all work. But the way how it works is that different things, that's the thing with energy body, that it's a complex, and it has different functions at the same time in the same space. Yeah.
Is it possible that something could go through all the layers? Like it could be located in the tailbone, but then go through all the bhumis to the edge of the aura or something, and you might feel you might like experience it in the physical body, but it could be at the edge of the aura somehow.
Definitely. Yes, definitely. There was just, I think I mentioned her when we started this retreat, that there was a lady last month or in May joining weekend retreat, and she had never done combing before. And she was combing for the first time, and then she said that, heck, pains from my physical body disappeared. Because she was combing the aura. So there you have it. Pat.
Kim, what's this on the tailbone? I missed this.
What?
What exactly was it on the tailbone? What for a punct?
What was in the tailbone?
Yeah, that you had been discussing in past sessions. I
had like a trauma, very stubborn trauma, stored in the tip of the tailbone. Like a very tight knot.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's.
Hey, Patricia.
Sorry.
Patricia, can you say natural state in Spanish?
El estado natural.
El estado natural.
Estado natural.
Okay, thanks.
Sí.
Manus, please.
I was just going to say, is it not common to all people that this sense of security or like feeling unsafe or threatened, it kind of at the deepest level manifests in the tailbone? Like,
Yes, I would say so. You know, physically, subconscious mind, in my experience, is very much hands, stomach, solar plexus. You know, we all know the story about stress stomach, then tailbone, pelvic floor, and feet. Yeah, I think that's universal, yes.
I want to ask about Vajra body. When I feel pain in some area, for example, in some muscles, should I, when doing Vajra body, do less intensity or maybe more intensity, but not in this area? What's better?
You can find out yourself, Olga. But something that can cause, I don't know if you have had some injury in the particular muscles or pains before, but something that can cause some pain is if you're squeezing too hard too quickly, so that the muscles don't have time to warm up. So warm up the muscles. So in that case, you can do like a 1 or 2 sets with lighter tension to get the muscles warmed, and then no problem, you can use harder. But have you had injuries?
No, but I think it was because my muscles weren't warm enough these sessions, and we did much more this
Right.
100%
Yeah. That's also,
business. So I
of
have
course.
pains in my back and ribs now.
Good. So you went to the gym after a long break. It's good.
Yeah.
It's the same thing like going to the gym after a long time. It's good.
Thanks.
It's natural. Sean, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you, and maybe the sangha, if my feelings are normal. When I first started this practice, I had a rough ride, probably like everyone else. You know, I remember having a tot of whiskey before I go to bed because it was like an emotional roller coaster. You know, them dark nights were really heavy to the point where I felt life was so awful and so painful. You know, I wasn't contemplating suicide, but I was thinking at that time that I would have been better if I wasn't born because life was so awful and painful. But then, as you know, dark nights, them heavy nights have gone, and I'm not drinking. Quite the opposite. But I still have mental obstacles coming up, like the ones that I get now. I mean, I call them emotional punch bags. I'm the punch bag, and the emotions sort of beat me up. But they're like now it's like I'm too old. I'm not smart enough to understand this practice. I've got too many tasks to do, and they keep on coming, and they're getting in the way of serious practice. And it seems to be when the heat's turned on, they come up more, you know. reasons for not doing the practice. And I suppose I've got the self is cornered, and he's looking for a way out here. Is this normal?
Yes, it is normal. I can relate to all of that. And I've had tons of suicidal thoughts. Yes, very, very, to me, there's nothing out of nothing out of the ordinary in that. And it is very few people who don't have tough dark nights. But I think that the majority of people have them, no matter what the practice is. But of course, you know, tantric practices, it's how do you say? It's like what is that? There is this movie about 1930s gangsters and police in Chicago in 1930s, Untouchables. So, you know, it's like a tantric practice is, if you do tantric practice, it's kind of, it doesn't bend according to our discomfort. It gives you the hard, cold truth that at the same time is extremely soft and loving. But because of our conditioning, self-based conditioning, is where the pain comes from. Like you said, that the self or I is cornered. And in that case, in those situations, it is good to remind ourselves that what the practice is. And it is very difficult. I remember myself like this, I don't know, you know, this just intense anger, you know, fuck off everything, you know, fuck all sentient beings, fuck the gurus, fuck the Sangha, and burn the Dharma books. Not to even mention ex-spouses and people who you had conflicts with. I know all of that. So in that case, you know, it's what happens then, what happens with dark nights is always we get paralyzed. More or less we get paralyzed. If it's depression definitely makes you paralyzed. Anxiety makes you paralyzed. Fear, anger makes you paralyzed. It's just that you are paralyzed with this, in the case of anger, you're paralyzed with this red, hot, contracted energy of anger. So remind yourself to keep in movement. Don't get paralyzed. You know, there is actually one interesting thing is that, you know, the special troops SEALs in the US Army, SEAL,
Yes.
Special Ops. So what they do when they get paralyzed in a combat is that they are taught to look left and right, like this. Look left and right. Why? Because you get tunnel vision. That contraction, getting scared, for example, when bullets are flying in the air, you get tunnel vision. And when you go into that contracted mode in a war battle, then you are in danger because you can't think and you can't act. So that's why they break that contraction, that tunnel vision, by looking left and right. It breaks your bubble. That same three-dimensional bubble I was talking about. So when you have a dark night, Place your mind outside the bubble, outside your aura. Put it there. Just think about the space, even the three-dimensional space outside your three-dimensional aura. Place it there. Might work, might not work. If it doesn't work, then shouts, muscle tensings, mantras, guru mantras. Lots of guru mantras. And then when you have, I'm talking about the two modes now. So first we have to establish the first mode, selfless mode, as much as we can, in the best of our ability. We need to gain our mobility rather than be paralyzed. If we stay paralyzed, there is no end to these problems. I remember this one Danish fellow who is a teacher himself. He said in his interview that because he didn't know about dark nights and nobody told him about dark nights or ways to get out of it, he had depression of 16 years as a practitioner. So he didn't know, why. He didn't know that why he was suffering so much. Could have been very easily changed, that situation, but in his case it took 16 years until that bubble state just finally released. But so first you have to establish, if it is not the completely pure and clear natural state, then at least calmness, some space you need to have. And from that space, look back into that pain, look back into that frustration, suicidal thoughts, pointlessness of living, pointlessness of your existence. Look back into that. And here's the point. This is what really develops our character. If we only try to do the first mode, just getting back to that selfless space and then not wanting to address the stuff, doing that, you just bypass. It's called spiritual bypassing. And in that way, one won't grow, one won't develop in practice. So, way to maturation is through going through hells. This is bodhisattva business we're at. This is no small kids play. We have the 6 realms, including hell realms, in our own mind. And this is what it means. These very dark places. But then we have a vow that we want to become Buddhas, no matter what. We are going right through that swamp, right through the Mordor, to the basic state. And there is pain when you're right there in the middle of the swamp. Oh heck, just like in Lord of the Rings or Hobbit, which one is it? The swamp. So you're there in the middle of the swamp and you don't know what's left or right. You don't know where the direction is. Establish the first mode. Remind yourself about the first mode. And no matter what, fight out from that emotion, from that paralyzing stuckness. Fight your way out of it. But then, then you have some peace, some clarity, and you're still in the swamp. become aware of the swamp. Become aware of the scary orcs. Just remain aware. This is the most demanding thing for any being to do. But this is the direct way to full and perfect enlightenment. Millions of people before us have done it. But maybe it's the first time when we are doing it. And then, it's very challenging when you do things for the first time. I remember when I was a kid and I was learning to drive the bicycle. And I fucking hated it because I couldn't do it the several first tries. It sucked. But then I kept trying, like we all did, and then we learned to drive the bicycle. Same thing with everything. First times with everything are very difficult, challenging. I'm sure none of us were good at having sex the first time. First times with everything. Hope that's helpful.
Thank you for that. Yeah. I have found myself surrendering, just giving up, trying to give up the self and all the negativity that the self brings to mind.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to ask you something on a practical note, is the combing.
Yeah.
You went into detail so much about the Vajra body. The combing, the aura is 1.5 meters round. My arm's about 1 meter, but I find myself and I see other people just doing this. There's all behind and there's on top and down below. Should we stand up and try and cover that whole area when we're combing? Is this enough?
Do you have like exceptionally short arms, Sean?
Well, I think they're normal, but I just wonder whether this round
Okay.
area was enough sitting in a chair.
Okay.
Or should we stand up and try and cover that as much of that 1.5 meter area as possible?
So here's the deal. The reason why you see people doing just this is because it's not that, well, it's a physically a fact in the case of most people, I think, that our arm is not long enough to touch the edge of the aura. But in your mind, you can think that the fingers and hand reaches there. So, we could do combing like this. I can comb in my mind. I can visualize in my mind how I'm creating spirals with mantras covering the whole aura. But here we are just using hands as it's a more concrete way of doing it. So, for example, if I think of the space, the aura around my head up here, I might cover the whole dome of my energy field just by doing this. Front, up, back, sides, middle. Very small movements, but I imagine that it reaches the whole dome, reaches the whole aura, reaches the whole pillar down. That's the thing.
Thank you.
And combing and tapping in reference to dark nights, excellent practices. You can avam 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 namo guru rimboche namo guru rimboche namo guru rimboche namo guru rimboche. You literally tap the energy body of the first 6 bhumis full of guru mantras. Excellent practices for dark night.
Quick question about dark nights. Can it sometimes seem like there's some kind of external thing in the world that is playing out a dark night, or is it always just like internal, like nothing that seems like there's an external reason for it?
Well, I think that we often at least, or most of the times, make the mistake of thinking that the problem is outside. And that's the practice exactly. This is what separates practitioners from non-practitioners. That with everything, with every even smallest conflict that happens in your mind, even if it was your boss not giving you a raise, your companion doing something that you don't like. What separates practitioners and non-practitioners is that practitioners always find out how much of this reaction is caused by this sense of self. How much? And then if there is sense of self involved, like there usually is, then you look at it, then you practice vipassana. This is something non-practitioners don't do. Of course, people have, people have basic ethics, basic values, basic morals that gives them a compass. Mentally healthy adults who have moral values, they don't get lost in the stuff. But nevertheless, non-practitioners are not specific on those ego reactions, when practitioners are. Thank you for very good questions. Let's start practice.